It's open mic night. Theater of the Wolf. Chum Daddy will be performing. What? Do you participate in karaoke? I'll be a stand-up comedian instead. No. Yes. What are you going to be? Rick Harrison recently revealed something shocking. Chumlee might spend the rest of his life behind bars. It's not a joke either. Rick ultimately broke the news to the world at the age of 59. And it completely rocked the fans. How did the humorous Pawn Stars character get himself into this predicament? Rick is going to confirm that his former comrade will be executed. The pawn shop family was destroyed by the fame. Give it some time to sink in. The man who amused us with his absurd wagers, strange devices, and naive appearance is now spending the rest of his life in prison. This isn't a new season twist or a practical joke. This is a true story that illustrates how fame can consume and expel you. Chumlee considered the pawn store to be a second home for many years. Now, though, it seems as though he never was. Before we go any further, it's obvious that Chumlee's reality is much more sinister than fans ever imagined. And you will be rendered dumbfounded by more than just this. Let's take a step back, though. Recall that when the cameras first appeared, a tiny dusty pawn store in Las Vegas turned into a treasure trove. The operations mastermind, Rick Harrison, was an experienced professional. He transformed dull old pawning into a highly regarded TV program, with his no-nonsense demeanor and keen understanding of history and collectibles. How are you tonight, Las Vegas? Okay, thank you for coming out here then. I am aware that there are plenty other concerts in Las Vegas that you might have gone to. But let's be honest, none of you had the money to do so. Strange items were sold by people who came in. Ancient swords, rare coins, and even heads that have shrunk. Chumlee provided the laughter, and he knew how to make it thrilling. It appeared ideal for a time. His and Chumlee's banter was adored by fans. Chumlee was the star of the show despite playing the idiot. In actuality, though, things weren't exactly joyful behind the scenes. The entire dynamic was altered by fame. As the money flowed in quickly, there were too many hidden things, backstabbing, and litigation. Chumlee began living a rock star lifestyle. You name it, flamboyant attire, large gatherings, fast automobiles, etc. He wasn't made for that kind of life, which is the issue. He made bad decisions, hung out with the wrong people, and allowed things to get out of control. Because he was still the humorous man on film, everyone else ignored him. However, the fun ended when the police arrived. It was more than one blunder that got him into this predicament. It was a series of poor choices compounded by one another. The charges were not minor. The man who used to run the store is now stating it quite bluntly. Chumlee is footing the bill. He made people laugh on cable TV, but it doesn't mean the law is favoring him. He is coping with more than simply Chumlee's downfall. His entire universe is collapsing. There is a lot of turmoil surrounding the store, the brand, and the family. Would you mind illuminating these for old Ricky over here? You don't appear to be very happy, Ricky. According to his own mother, who claims she was defrauded of her share of the firm when she was ill. I don't seem to need you anymore. She claims she wants everything back, since he forced her to sign documents, while she wasn't thinking clearly. She is requesting that the court prevent him from handling the family funds, and has even filed a restraining order. He claims that his 81-year-old mother is being used as a pawn, and that none of it is genuine. However, the harm has already been done. The picture presented by the headlines is different. The subject shifts from Chumlee's demise to a legal dispute. The pawn store remains a ghost of its former self in the midst of everything. Not even the money is what it once was. The store used to generate over $1 million annually. However, those figures fell precipitously when the pandemic struck. There are more bills than dollars, the store is quiet, and there are no tourists, walk-ins, or deals. The once golden kingdom is beginning to resemble a shattered memento. When you factor in the lawsuits, the strained relationships, and the negative publicity. He consistently stated that the store was about more than just making sales. It was about history, recollections, and anecdotes. Now, though, it seems like every story is a scandal. They would want to forget the history, and the memories are sour. Additionally, Chumlee's serving life casts a shadowy pall over everything. Fans didn't want this conclusion. People watched for the family arguments, the oddball objects, and the laughter. They didn't sign up for lawsuits, betrayal, and the permanent imprisonment of a cherished cast member. But sometimes, that's what fame does. It raises you and then abruptly lowers you. You can hear it in his voice as he claims to still be focused on managing the company and attempting to keep things together. The enthusiasm and the energy are no longer present. Too many conflicts, too many defeats. Even a tough guy like that has to bear the consequences. When your mom sues you, your right-hand man gets locked up, and the money stops coming in. However, maintaining the shop was only the beginning. His own family was thrown into a major turmoil by what transpired next. The reality behind the on-screen grins. When something goes wrong, it truly does go wrong. Joanne was in a difficult situation because she was over 80 and had some very serious health issues. She needed 24-hour assistance simply to get through the day, and the cost of that kind of care is high. The monthly amount is almost $115,000. Apparently, having her allowance taken away, she did what many others would do in her situation. She looked to the legal system, filing a restraining order in response to her action. However, money wasn't the only factor here. This was a calculated move. Her money was not the main reason for the court ruling. Not at all. Additionally, it prevented the person in charge of the family's finances from concealing or transferring their funds. Until someone could sort out the issue, she wanted to keep everything frozen in place, the assets and business just as they were. How he found out was perhaps the thing that hurt him the most. From the news, not from her. Imagine discovering your own family is suing you while reading the headlines. Ah. He said that despite his repeated attempts to phone her, there was only radio static, quiet, and no one available to have a meaningful conversation. Any calm arrangement was immediately thrown out the window. And let's face it, after that kind of drama, nobody is returning to a happy household. That familial bridge was essentially destroyed. But hold on, there are more issues facing this family than just court paperwork and broken hearts. If you believed it to be the whole story, you should reconsider, as Chumlee is about to arrive. Now, a wild card has always been Austin Chumlee Russell. Off-screen, the guy had some significant baggage, even though he was the fun one on television. He was seen shaking hands with a stranger in Hollywood back in 2012. The other guy was left bloodied and bruised on the sidewalk when it descended into a full-blown fight. Chumlee said the man had threatened him and his buddies, so he defended himself. He might or might not have been telling the truth. In any case, the appearance wasn't very good. However, that battle was only a warm-up. In 2016, everything truly went south. When the police arrived at Chumlee's home that year with a search warrant, they were investigating charges related to an assault case. They did more than only knock courteously. The entire place was raided. It was not a nice sight. Guns, meth, marijuana, and even some pills and traces of more potent substances. Even one of the firearms was not legally registered. The allegations include 19 counts related to drugs, and 1 related to firearms. The damage was done even though the assault accusation was later dismissed. It's difficult to remove your name from those headlines once people start talking about it and passing judgment. In the end, Chumlee made an agreement, entered a guilty plea to several offenses, including attempting to get drugs and possessing an illegal firearm. It did not clear his name, but it kept him out of jail. Furthermore, it went beyond what the police discovered. They discovered so much: 12 firearms, 8 of which were unregistered, bags of marijuana, pills, and traces of a white powder. It isn't your typical party stash. However, don't assume Chumlee cornered the market on chaos that set up shouts. Bad choices were made here. I am unable to contact Rick since he is Corey Big Hoss Harrison, his own son. Chum was duped into believing he had won $10,000 in a scratcher ticket by me. 10,000 brought chaos in his own way. Corey always had a lot to say. One day he hoped to manage the store, but instead of having steady hands and cunning, he was enjoying the life of a rock star. He got into trouble after drinking too much and doing something really stupid while riding a bike in Missouri. Imagine this. He's in a bar. As everyone watches, he abruptly pulls it out and begins to urinate in public. Outside, not in a restroom. He throws a bar stool across the room after that. Not exactly a candidate for leadership. He was expelled from the bar for that stunt, and it struck hard when the news made the rounds. He expressed regret and remarked, "You know, you can't unpee in public." There was additional disturbance while the judicial battle was going on. And Chumlee and Corey were making everything worse this time. After the party ended poorly, just when things appeared to be getting under control, another mess appeared. For a quick vacation in the California desert in 2020, Corey rented an RV. Before it wasn't, it was a fun notion. On a specific date, he was expected to bring it back. He didn't. According to the RV's owner, Corey's assistant contacted to report that they had damaged the vehicle. The busted car didn't arrive for another 2 days though, and there were more than a few scratches. The awning is gone. The interior was ruined. There are empty bottles all about, eggshells even. Who hosts such a party in an RV? The damage seems to have been caused by a tornado. What do you get when you combine everything? In front of the cameras, a family and their team are disintegrating. Behind the scenes, it's drama, drugs, and devastation. Although they may act cool at the pawn store, talking bargains and old toys. Drug raids, bar fights, restraining orders, legal disputes, and vandalized RVs. They've fulfilled all the requirements. This was no ordinary broken-down vehicle. According to a man named VFA, fixing his severely damaged RV would cost over $30. Oh. The worst thing wasn't even that. He said that the damage forced him to cancel 10 reservations. Consider that. It was trashed, so 10 times someone could have hired it but couldn't. Guess who did he blame? Harrison, Corey. Yes. But rather than take responsibility, Corey remained silent and made no payment. VFA ultimately went to the police. After that received some attention, Corey's team made an abrupt attempt to defuse the situation. They said that the RV broke, that it was unable to move, and that the pop-outs would not close. Hair loss. You may have gone through menopause for 10 years or more, dude. Corey had it towed back to Vegas, and you may have the oldest known case of menopause. And insurance would take care of it. That was it. The narrative is over. Was it, though? The harm was done even if he was not subject to legal action. People saw and spoke, and in the world of reality stars, appearances are more important than you may believe. However, Corey was dealing with more than simply legal action and press coverage. He was up against something even more formidable behind the scenes: his personal well-being. In 2010, his weight had increased to the point where he required gastric bypass surgery. The pounds did really drop. More than 100 are gone, but it doesn't mean everything is solved. Being famous comes with pressure. There is pressure to run a firm. Maintaining your health while balancing both is cruel. However, Chumlee remained supportive and even initiated his own weight loss program. The peace is fleeting, but the friendship is strong. Larger fissures were visible in the show. Experts were usually needed by Pawn Stars. Not only the father-son drama or the amusing banter. The professionals gave it a sense of realism. They discuss history, rarity, value, and converting trash into gold or gold into trash. People adore that. However, a few of those specialists began making headlines. Let's consider Johnny Jimenez Jr. He was well known for his vintage toys. However, he was in the news for all the wrong reasons in 2015. He and his girlfriend were seen on camera outside a restaurant in Vegas. It was a full-on scene rather than a romantic dating night. The majority of our training has been done by Chumlee. Rick has given me some one-on-one training, but Chumlee and I train alone most nights. It did not appear good that he was suspected of harming her. He said that he was assisting her because she was intoxicated. But once your name is associated with anything like that, it becomes memorable. Supporters remembered. John Resnikoff followed. He was well-versed in signatures and had a crisp appearance on film. You're an autograph expert? Until he made a complete mess. He claimed in 2011 that Al Pacino's signature appeared on a Godfather script. As a spoiler, it wasn't. Al Ruddy was the producer. It might not seem like much to some, but for a guy who should be an expert, it was a huge failure. What else had he overlooked that no one noticed if he had missed that? However, Drew Max was the source of the worst controversy. He discussed everything related to sports collectibles, signed gear, balls, and jerseys. He was the one to call. However, he was exposed for fraud in 2015. Not a single mistake. He approved of the sale of counterfeit goods to those who believed they were getting the real thing. They weren't. Buyers claimed that he deceived people by using his show fame to gain trust. That was a big hit, because what did the rest of the show signify if the experts were dishonest? Fans made an effort to remain faithful, but something was shifting. If you thought things were awful enough, the show itself began to unravel in unexpected ways. Pawn Stars used to feel raw as the show evolved into something different. It was impossible to predict what someone may bring in. An ancient lunchbox, a signed Beatles record, and a Civil War weapon. The store was charming. It was heartfelt. Rick would explain the past, strike a bargain, and impart knowledge. The battles even seemed genuine. Dad is irritated with his son, and coworkers are fighting over values. However, as the years went by, supporters were aware that something was strange. Online users began claiming that the things were already priced, and that the merchants were pre-selected. The entire situation began to resemble a drama rather than a pawn shop. Arguments grew less genuine, louder, and more dramatic. It was no longer about the object. The point was to see who could shout the loudest. The heart was failing. Wondering who will storm off this time was the next step after learning something interesting about a World War helmet. The helmet from World War I is an excellent piece. Rick's decision to purchase for $500 was a wise one. And if it's true, I can assure you that the folks in the shop will be thrilled. The enchantment of entering a real store with an odd find, and possibly leaving without any money. People didn't notice that. And gradually, the stars themselves ceased to be people, and instead became characters. Rick became the boss's grump. The preoccupied man attempting to establish himself was Corey, as well as Chumlee. It was still humorous, but Chumlee's real-life issues no longer fit the tone of the show. He was plagued with legal troubles. His admirers had to cope with mug photographs, court papers, and grave charges. The TV version of him didn't fit it. It was difficult to watch. It was impossible to chuckle at his foolishness without considering what was happening behind the scenes. As if that weren't enough, the store began to expand. Merchandise, spin-offs, and other shows. But rather than enhancing what made it unique, it felt more like a quest for celebrity. No one wanted to see another show. They desired the return of that show. The one when Rick gave you some interesting information and something strange entered the room. Rather, it became a soap opera with background collectibles. The fans took note, and it's difficult to regain trust after you've lost it. Pawn Stars was well known, but beneath the glamour, things quickly became chaotic. In an attempt to capitalize on the excitement around the show, Rick created Pawn Plaza. It sounds elegant, doesn't it? Near the main pawn shop, restaurants and small shops were put up, but no one showed up. The location was a ghost town, truly. Shop owners had hoped that tourists would arrive from the concert, but they were disappointed. Then the accusing began. Rick was held accountable for doing very little to promote the venue. No crowds, no bustle, no advertisements. Only vacant tables and shops closing one after the other. He was even sued by some. Another mess appeared while that flip continued. Do you recall Olivia Black? The cool style belonged to her. Began appearing on the show in 2012. I started the potting business since I was a personal assistant seeking a second job, and came across this employment on Craigslist. Fans adored her, but she abruptly disappeared from the show, just as she was starting to establish herself as a regular presence. Online, people were clamoring to know what had happened. After that, the internet did what it does best, and discovered that she had modeled naked before the concert. She was fired by the producers, because they weren't happy. The fans weren't pleased. They believed it to be unjust, possibly even sexist. But Olivia didn't conceal. She continued modeling and working away from the spotlight. Even attempted to sue, but the case was unsuccessful. She recovered. The show didn't help. But wait, things get worse. According to a man in 2014, his niece sold his coin collection to a gold and silver store after stealing it. The store compensated her less than $3,000, but he said those coins were worth $50. The monies were either melted or jumbled into haphazard buckets by the time he realized what was going on and notified the police. Even still, it wasn't a good look. The store claimed, "Hey, we had no idea they were stolen, and also those coins weren't that valuable." Does Chumlee really have a crime that is so heinous that he should spend the rest of his life in prison? Or is the public being kept in the dark about something deeper? Please share your thoughts with us. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more.